Heads ups. Today in laboratory we're doing a exercise on proteins, and I'm going to finish the last part of the proteins lecture handout as the pre-lab, so please bring your proteins lecture handout to laboratory today. I think I might have all the field trip forms from you guys now, so good for you getting them to me. If you haven't gotten them to me yet, then please do so as soon as possible. And so the field trip will be 1 week from today, and we're going to leave at 1 o'clock. And there's going to be a bus that's going to take us, and the bus will be at that parking circle. And you think you know where this is. If this is the parking structure, here. Not sure if you can see that. And this is the library right here. This is where the buses and the jitneys pull around, and where sometimes people park their cars temporarily. Oh yeah, Merrill Hall, I guess, is more or less right here. Anyway, so there'll be a bus here at 1 o'clock next Wednesday. All right. Be there on time or get left behind. What's that again?
This is leaving at 1 o'clock?
Yeah, so it'll leave at 1 o'clock, so try to get there ahead of time. All right, wunderbar. I guess that's all the messages I had. Oh yeah, so every Friday in here we have our Friday quiz. This coming Friday quiz will be part on the nucleic acids chapter, and partially on this chapter we're on now, which is about cells. We'll study up both of those. Okay, let's see. So we are on this chapter about cells right now, and one of the major points from last time was that there are two major types of cells: prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells. And what's the defining difference between the two? Not sure if I heard it. Nucleus, thank you. The defining difference is the nucleus. A eukaryotic cell, like this one you see here, has a nucleus, which is an inner membrane, an inner phospholipid bilayer that surrounds and protects its DNA, its chromosomes. Whereas prokaryotic cells, which I don't have up here on this particular slide, prokaryotic cells do not have a nucleus. Their chromosome just floats around inside the cytoplasm with nothing inside the cell surrounding it. So that is the defining difference. And then there are other differences also. Prokaryotic cells are smaller. Prokaryotic cells do not have any organelles made out of membranes like eukaryotic cells do. But the defining difference is whether a nucleus is present or not. Now that being said, there are several things that are the same between prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells. As a matter of fact, you can say these are common features of all cells, and they are the plasma membrane, sometimes called the cell membrane. All cells, no matter what type, have that. All cells have a cytoplasm, which is sometimes called the cytosol, which is the watery liquid that fills up the cell. All cells have one or more chromosomes, where their DNA, their genes are. And all cells have a type of organelle called a ribosome, which you can't see in this particular slide because they're kind of tiny, but prokaryotic cells, eukaryotic cells, it doesn't matter. All of them have these ribosome organelles. And then what I think I was doing on Wednesday was going through those similarities, like what's the plasma membrane all about, and let's see some things listed there about it. And then I mentioned cell walls. Not all cells have cell walls, but our cells do not, but other cells like plant cells do. And a cell wall is a rigid protective structure that's outside the plasma membrane. It would be around here if this cell did have a cell wall. Outside the plasma membrane that protects the cell by protecting the plasma membrane. Okay, well, let's see. I guess I then left off on the DNA or the chromosomes. Where is my overhead? Here it is, okay. So another similarity between prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells was that they all have DNA. And I've been going on quite a bit about DNA. Whenever I talk about it, I say it is the genetic molecule, meaning it is the instructions for running the cell. It gives the cell all of its traits. And the DNA molecules inside cells are part of these big structures that are called chromosomes. So let's zoom in on those and see a little bit more information about them. Here we go. So we are looking inside this eukaryotic cell and at its chromosomes. Now you can tell this is a eukaryotic cell because it has this membrane surrounding its chromosomes, the purple thing in this drawing. But just focusing in on the chromosomes for a minute, each chromosome is a very long piece of double-stranded, double-helix DNA. And remember what that means, that each strand here of DNA is made up of G and A and T and C nucleotides. But whenever you find DNA molecules inside living things, they're not single-stranded bits of DNA. You always find them as double-stranded bits that are held together by complementary base pairing, meaning if there's an A nucleotide here, there's always a T nucleotide on the other strand that it's paired up with. If there's a C nucleotide on this strand, it's always paired up with a G nucleotide on the other one. It's basically the hydrogen bonding that holds those complementary bases together. Now, chromosomes, then think of each chromosome as an extremely long piece of double-stranded, double-helix DNA. They have some other features as well. This little ball-shaped thing right here is part of the chromosome. It's called the centromere. And here I just defined it as the central region of the chromosome. If I had to elaborate on that a little bit, I guess I would say it is the handle of the chromosome. What we're going to see later on is that when cells divide, they have to move their chromosomes around, and the centromere acts as sort of a gripping point to handle where they can move the chromosomes around. Another feature of chromosomes is that they have some proteins as part of them called histone proteins that are the spools for the double-stranded piece of DNA. If this represents actually here's a better view here. If this line right here represents the double-stranded DNA of a chromosome, these histone proteins are like wrapping balls or spools for the DNA to wrap around. And the reason why they are necessary is that the DNA of a chromosome is so long, it just wouldn't fit inside the cell if it were just allowed to sort of be long and stretched out. And so the cell has to compact that DNA somehow, and that's what the histone molecules, the histone proteins are for. I remember reading somewhere that in each cell in your body, if you let the DNA inside of it stretch out without the histones, it would be around 3 feet long, about that far. And if you think about it, that's amazing because each individual cell is just a microscopically little tiny thing. And to think that each and every cell in your body has 3 feet worth of DNA inside of it, that's huge. And so they really do need these histones to coil up that DNA tightly onto the chromosomes. All right, so all cells, eukaryotic, prokaryotic, will have one or more chromosomes. In eukaryotes, the chromosomes are linear structures, meaning they're like a piece of string, like you see here. That is, they have a beginning end here and an ending end over there, just like a piece of string or a piece of wire would have. In prokaryotic cells, you had a different situation. In prokaryotic cells, the chromosome is circular shape. Why did you do that? Oh, here we go. I brushed against it with my leg. That explains why that did it. Anyway, in prokaryotic cells, The chromosome is always hoop-shaped like you see here, a circular shape. So it doesn't have a beginning end and an ending end, it's a circle. And I always thought that was kind of interesting. Why is it that in we eukaryotes, our chromosomes are lines, and in prokaryotes, they're circles? I don't know, I've never seen an explanation for that. It's just one of the features of life on Earth, of these two different cell types, prokaryotic and eukaryotic. Prokaryotic cells, not only is their chromosome circular in shape, but they only ever have just one chromosome, one singular hoop-shaped chromosome. Whereas in eukaryotes, they almost always have more than one of their linear chromosomes. I might have mentioned that we human beings happen to have 46 chromosomes per cell. That number varies from one species to another. I seem to recall chimpanzees have 48, and I think dogs or cats have 38. You don't have to memorize those exact numbers. The only one I want you to know is that human beings have 46 chromosomes. And prokaryotes, as I mentioned earlier, their chromosome is not inside a nucleus. They don't have a nucleus, whereas we eukaryotes do have a nucleus. Oh, there's a close-up of the prokaryotic chromosome. We eukaryotes do have a nucleus, and so that's where our chromosomes are contained, like you see there. Sound good? Okay, let's move on then a little bit. Sometimes I show you this slide, and if I want to emphasize the proteins that keep the cell running. If you think of each cell in your body as a factory where processes have to be carried out to keep the cell alive and functioning, the proteins are the workers of the cells. The proteins actually carry out the jobs, the tasks that keep the cell running and functioning. And we talked about the various types of proteins. There are enzyme proteins, probably, in my opinion, the most important of the protein types. They are the chemists. They grab hold of molecules and carry out chemical reactions on those molecules, which means changing the molecule in some way.